Welcome to another episode of The Caribbean Immigrant. I am your host, Kamala Aaron, also the executive producer of The Caribbean Immigrant, which is a podcast that tells the stories of people who leave the shores of paradise for the hustle of the developed world. And we try to tell these stories with some, rhythm and melody, sugar and spice that is quintessentially Caribbean. And the person who is pulling up to the Caribbean Immigrant on this episode is an icon. People overuse that word, but in this case, I'm not overusing that word. He is an icon, an inventor of a music genre, Calypso, happens to be from the same country that I am from, which is the Commonwealth of Dominica. He's a musician, a songwriter, and has been a lead of a band for many years. In my household, he's known as Le Gonton. Gordon Henderson, thank you for pulling up to the Caribbean Immigrant.
Well, greetings. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. And I was telling you but I'll say this on the record that in our household, the Aaron household, you are completely loved. We are obsessed with you and your career in the best way possible. Okay, in the best way possible. And sometimes my husband can write a biography about you and your work. I mean, it's that intense. So I'm just letting you know.
But I feel very, very humbled, flattered, honored. But I must recognize the fact that your husband and we come from the same, I think you say in the States, in the same neck of the woods.
That's right.
Portsmouth. Zika, that happens to be a Carib name, or Kalinago, as we say these days.
Yes. Very proudly so. Very proudly so. He says that all the time. So yes, I'm gonna get to the meat of the matter, but I start this podcast with 5 rapid fire questions. Okay, so I'm gonna pose them to you. I'm very interested in your answers, especially because of who you are, the icon that you are. So what is your all-time favorite memory of the Caribbean?
Strangely, it's coconut water. And why coconut water? Because of all the things that I can find elsewhere, even in the tropics, even in Africa or the Indian Ocean, the coconut water is never the same.
Never the same. You're right.
And in the Caribbean, there's a certain commonality irrespective of the island, from Puerto Rico, or let's say from Jamaica to Trinidad. So coconut water to me is a unique drink, if you will, that symbolizes the Caribbean in my mind.
I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. What is your favorite Caribbean saying?
It's our. Now, this is supposed to be Creole, but our Creole is French rooted, and I don't see the connection. So I suppose it might be an African or probably a Kalinago word, which it's difficult to define it in English, but it would mean negative. No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Oh, I love that. Who has the best dialect? And give me your best impression of it.
Well, it depends how you define dialect. I have been a student of linguistics, and I know there is a famous linguist who said that dialect becomes a language if the user has an Air Force, a Navy, and an Army. I subscribe to that. So the best dialect to me, if you may call it a dialect, is what we speak in Creole, what we speak in Haiti, across, because it is the foundation of Caribbean linguistics or communication. I don't want to go into any long story, but historically, our languages were taken away from us, and we had to create one. So this is the foundation. And probably later we'll talk about the music, why Creole as a dialect without army, etc., stands out to me.
That is very interesting perspective. What is your go-to Caribbean song? This, ladies and gentlemen, to the creator of a genre and a band lead, musician, all of that. I'm curious about that one.
Well, there are many songs, but there is one song, it's titled Wake Up, and it was sung by my memory. Wake Up. She is, well, she was, she has passed. It's a Dominican singer. I don't know why.
Ellie Starr.
Nelly Starr. Nelly Starr.
Really?
So
Really?
the song is titled Wake Up.
Oh,
And some may ask why it's that song,
yes.
because it is Cadaslypso. And for our listeners who don't speak Creole, we call it Cadaslypso, but in fact, in English, it should be cadence.
Yes.
Lypso. We all know that cadence means rhythm or whatever, but it's Creole. We pronounce it. So one is Cadaslypso. Two, the song was composed by one guy from French Guiana, the other from Guadeloupe, and they produced it. She did the singing. I think the singing is excellent. In that recording, she incorporates Jamaican because she seemed to have been very influenced by reggae and what's Jamaican. And so I think all of this represents a kind of fusion that brings a lot of joy to my heart whenever I hear it. And I hear it quite often because it's used as a theme song on one of the radio stations back home, early morning show. So despite the fact that I hear it so often, it always brings warmth to my heart. So Nelly Starr, Wake Up,
Very
which
interesting.
is cadence lypso. We have to say that in English. Cadence.
Cadence. Which is a word that is used every single day at my job. What is the cadence that we will do this? So it always makes me
Oh,
smile.
I'm happy to hear that.
I'm telling you,
Because
every day.
Sometimes when I tell people that this cadence thing is simply cadence, and they said cadence because it looks like a very special word that is not used often in other circumstances.
Right.
I don't know why, but my image is gone on my end. But can you
It's
hear me
back. I can see you.
and hear me?
I can only hear you now. I can see you again.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't know why, but my screen went blank. But if you can see me, that's fine.
Yes, I can see you just fine. And final question in the rapid fire is, who is your favorite Caribbean artist?
My favorite Caribbean artist is Slinger Francisco the Mighty Sparrow.
I can't see you anymore.
I wonder why.
I wonder why.
I see you again. I see you again.
I can hear you just fine. Okay, I can see you now.
Okay. I really don't know what went wrong.
Very interesting. Okay.
Anyway,
Yes, the Mighty
the Mighty Sparrow.
Mhm.
Slinger Francisco. It's probably because I consider Calypso as being fundamentally Caribbean. Many musicologists will say that Calypso is a Caribbean art form that originated in Trinidad. And I don't like that definition because that's impossible. It
Right.
originated on the slave plantations, particularly on the slave plantations in the French colonies then. So it existed in Jamaica, they called it Mento and so on. It eventually went to Trinidad, and around the 1930s, it started to take form. So Trinidad did very, very well in molding what we may call an art form to what it has become today. But I think that the biggest contributor is the Mighty Sparrow because of his voice, very special gift, his art of singing, and his compositions. One may think of Bob Marley because of his global impact, but I think that even Bob Marley was influenced by the Mighty Sparrow.
Mighty Sparrow. International also. So very interesting to know. that Mighty Sparrow is it for you, your favorite artist. So now let me get into the deeper questions, right? By the way, you're in France.
Yes,
I'm
Paris.
in Nashville. You're in France. You're in Paris, France
Yes,
specifically. Okay. The city of love.
that's what they say. They
You know,
also, yeah.
you
But it took me a long time to understand that because the semantic shift of gay. When they said gay Paris, I said, hooray. When I understood gay Paris, I said, well, hooray. It's all good, no matter.
God, you are such a Portsmouth man. You all have a kind of a sense of humor that is very interesting, to say the least. Okay. Okay. So listen, at the top of the broadcast of the show, I introduced you as an icon. I used to be a journalist, so words mean a lot to me. I don't use words lightly. For me, I don't think it helps the audience when you use a wrong word. People listen to you. So you're an icon in the truest sense of the word. You're creator of a genre of music that is now global. You know, so many people have pulled influence from. You know, you are an international performer, music writer, and all of that. When someone says icon with your name, what do you think about?
Well, I don't know. It makes me feel bittersweet. The reason is, as you indicated, particularly back home, because I really, despite the fact that I'm 54 years out of Dominica, so I have spent more of my life out than in. But with the advent of the internet, I am very connected to Dominica, listen to Dominican radio stations on a daily. So the words like icon and legend are used. We use it a lot in Dominica. Sometimes I say Dominica is a land of legends.
No, it's absolutely overused. I mean, it's overused.
Whenever I am described as such, it makes me wonder what else do I have to do? Well, it inspires me because there are so many people that I admire. You know, from when I was a teenager, I used to have pictures of the Mighty Sparrow, Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King pinned to my wall,
Really,
even before I was a teenager.
really.
So I looked up to these people and I don't feel that I have reached their level. So I don't know if icon really describes me. Not yet.
What do you think it's going to take from your perspective? Because, like I said, I mean, you've done all these things. And I also know, too, that people who are in these types of positions, iconic positions, and have done such legendary things, they just feel like they're just living their regular lives. They don't necessarily feel the thing that people are talking about. But I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what do you think it will take to get you to feel that or see that?
It's a matter of the kind of recognition that you get from the people that you may call your audience, in my case, because I'm in the world of art. So there is an audience. Recently, I started doing a documentary film, not about me, but about what I have experienced over 54 years in the music industry. And with that, I am publishing a book that I had written titled Zookland, and it is more of an autobiography. So over the last 12 months or so, I have been thinking a lot on this. When people describe me as legend, icon, and so on, I wonder. And then what I discovered over the last year or so, working on the documentary and on the book, is, and that falls right in to your topic of the immigrant, is I was born on the island of Dominica. I left when I was about age 20. I'm now 75, moving into 70.
Oh my God.
So that's quite a while out. I returned. And I figure in the life of an immigrant, there's always this in, out, obtaining other nationalities,
True.
etc. and so on. All of that is part of the game. But in my particular case, I find that I am neither carry come nor dumb, which is one of the statements that I discovered. Dum dum is the abbreviation for the French Overseas Departments and Territories. DOM is Département Outre-mer, Overseas Department. So dum dum and CARICOM, of course, we know is this common market in the Caribbean or some of the Caribbean islands. So I find myself, in terms of recognition, being neither CARICOM nor dum dum, because no matter the applause that I might get in the dum-dum, I still remain a Dominican.
Yeah.
And when I am in Dominica, I still feel a sense of not belonging. I feel the love, but when people speak of local artists, I am not really included, you know? So I think that the iconic stage will only be obtained if we go through this paradigm mentality shift that will have more inclusion to people who emigrate.
Right.
So
Gotcha. I find that perspective very, very interesting. I'm sure we could stay there for a while, but one of the things that you hit on is your migration. And it's one of the reasons that, I think you're a fascinating story in general, because I consider you to be a quintessential immigrant because of how early you started pursuing in a very serious way your music and your artistry, and you left Dominica to do that. You left Dominica, like you said, at age 20. You're now 75. You don't look it at all. No, you really don't. So I am curious about, was that deliberate? Did you intend to pursue your artistry, your music with such vigor? Just leave Dominica behind and just pursue that? Was that the goal?
That was not the goal. The goal was, we need to put everything in perspective. Okay. We're talking about the early 70s and the general mentality in Dominica, and I discovered in the other islands, including the French islands, because I in fact started in Guadeloupe.
Yes.
The general mentality is from top to bottom. And when I say from top to bottom, from the leaders of the country, the clergy, music should not be pursued as a career or a profession. So I was fortunate after high school to start in the job market. I was fortunate because I started as a school teacher. As a matter of fact, I told the Reverend brothers from the St. Mary's Academy, my alma mater, that I wanted to become a brother, and they sent me to meet the nuns in the convent and trained me to become a school teacher. And they might have seen something. They wanted me to spend a year teaching before getting into the vocation and so on. So I wanted to be a brother.
Really?
So I got trained and started teaching. I love teaching, but I didn't like the pay. So I know we don't have much time, but it's important to set the context.
Right.
One day I saw a job advertised at Gist Industries. Gist Industries was a British company that bought all our bananas and shipped to England and so on. And I went, but it was a job that was way superior to my qualification or experience. I went there and I was interviewed by this white man. When I stepped in, he burst out laughing and asked me, "Why are you dressed like this?" Now, in those days, school teachers were dressed with neckties and so on. I used to like cufflinks and whatever.
Oh, wow.
I stepped in there. I told him because I'm a teacher, and I just took an hour off to come to this interview. We spoke and I landed the job.
Oh, wow.
But I was immediately placed in mid-management, short computers that nobody had. As a matter of fact, these computers were not even electronic. They were manual computers to calculate this and that. And and I started working there. So I felt that was very fortunate. But I didn't stay in the job for two
But clearly
reasons.
not. Clearly not, Gordon.
But for two main reasons is because I thought that I couldn't handle managing people that were as old as my father. I couldn't deal with that. And I wanted to get into music because I always wanted to do music. Music, that's what I wanted to do. So finally, when I realized that music is what I wanted to do, I knew it could not have been done in Dominica. Today, it probably can be done. Maybe, but because technology permits people, you can do a decent recording on your smartphone, distribute your music worldwide using social media, communication. Now we have ferries going up and down and so on. So in terms of production, distribution, marketing, the elements that you need for a thriving music industry, they are available in Dominica today, but they were not even existing then. So this is why I decided to move to Guadeloupe. So that's the story. That was the motivation.
Wow. So I want to ask you this. You actually paved the way for a lot of other people. From my knowledge, when you moved to Guadeloupe, Guadeloupe was not very receptive to Dominicans, for example. And you created through, how can I say, created some of like an openness for Dominicans and other people to be able to get in there. Was that also something that was unconscious, subconscious, part of your plan? Did you know that you were doing that?
No, I didn't know I was doing that because once again, to put everything into perspective, I went to Guadeloupe alone. That's one point. Another very important point is Dominica did not exist as a country then. We were a British colony, so I went there with a British passport. And the people referred to us as Anglais, the English, not Dominican. So the Dominican phenomenon, in fact, started after Hurricane David in 1979. We really became Dominican. And when Dominica was demolished by that hurricane, there was an exodus towards Guadeloupe. People went there en masse. And that is where people realized, well, they're not really English, they are Dominican. So I went there, but the fact that I was English, I started to sing in English, and they were fond of English songs, because that's one thing that is very notable about Martinique and Guadeloupe. In terms of music, they have a wide diversity of appreciation, if we put it that way. So they can dance and sing Latin, and it's vast. So I carved my niche as an English singer. There was no Creole English. And it was as a result of making my name, so to speak, as an English singer, that I was able to invite musicians from Dominica to go directly to the studio. And this is how Exile One was born. So that was not in my plans. This is something that just happened.
So you did not realize that you were really paving the way for people, including Kassav and all of these people in the Guadeloupe market. That's amazing to me.
I had absolutely no idea what was going on. Absolutely no idea. Because as I said, I was becoming famous on a local level in Guadeloupe. Well, it spread to the other dom-toms, Martinique, French Guiana. But as a soul singer. So, which means in the life of this immigrant, I thought that I was an English singer. And when I invited, I must mention the name of Fitzroy Williams
Mhm.
because he was my schoolmate. We played music together as teenagers in Dominica. He was part of a famous group that preceded Exile One, the Gaylords. And he had some issues with the Gaylords, and he met me in Guadeloupe. I told him, well, I needed a band. So he's the one who selected the musicians for me in Dominica, and I got them all over to join me on our path, what I like to call the Rihanna syndrome, because all of us, including Kassav, as I have in my documentary, we all thought of penetrating the American market, what they like to call mainstream.
Yes.
So I refer to it as the Rihanna syndrome. We never thought that we had our own musical identity, that we had our own very important niche that spanned Africa, the Caribbean, the diasporas with an S, wherever they reside, be it in North America, in Europe, and elsewhere. We never thought of this. We all targeted the American market. And so it happened that Exile One, that the guys came across, we did a recording. It became kind of famous, but famous enough to get us to Europe. And we went to perform a dance. It was not really a concert. It was a dance for Martinican and Guadeloupean immigrants living in Paris, France. So you see the word immigrant comes up so often. So we played our soul music and they applauded. And after an hour or so, the promoter of the event whispered to me that we will have a big problem if we don't make the people dance, because they were applauding, but they didn't come to dance. They were nostalgic of home. And in those days, traveling to Europe was almost like a one-way ticket. Today, people go back and forth, but they didn't do that then. And this is where, by sheer coincidence, so there's no genius involved in it. Since I had lived in Guadeloupe for a while, I had played with Guadeloupean bands. I had an idea of what made these people dance. It was not our soul music or rock steady or whatever we played then. It was predominantly Haitian music that was called cadence rampa or compas direct. It's the same. There were two names for the same art form. That's what made these people dance. So I asked my fellow bandsmen, let's creolize the music. So we are predominantly calypso. We fused it and everybody started dancing and shouting. And this is where Calypso was born. I named it. I could have called it Compalypso.
Right.
I chose to call it Calypso because Cadas is a cognate. It exists in French and in English. The pronunciation is different, but it's spelled the same way. So I thought it was a good crossover word. So Calypso. So up to this point, this is where it was born. So Calypso is a Dominican expression, but it was born in Paris, France, by sheer coincidence, by accident. And it still didn't inspire us, the group, that this was the way to go, because we got an offer to do a recording. And the producer, we came up with an idea of the music that we loved with the target market that we had in mind. And he said, no, I don't want that. I want what you guys were playing at the dance that made these people so happy. And it was because of money, he paid us to do 2 albums. And the one in English certainly didn't have any impact. The second one is what created demand, created 35 other groups from Dominica. Imagine Dominica at the time might have had a population of maybe 50, 60,000. 35 other groups moved to Martinique, Guadeloupe, and got created and so on. And then the Guadeloupeans, this is why I like Wake Up, Wake Up, because it's a Guadeloupean group that worked with a Dominican singer, Nelista. So this shows the expansion. It became a movement that
Right.
eventually turned into Zouk, influenced soca, etc. But it wasn't done by design or by intellect. It happened. It just happened.
Extraordinary. When did you know you were famous?
The first time I realized that is when we went to French Guiana. Now, things went very quickly. The Group Exile One started in November 1973. Somewhere between 74 and 75, when there was demand, we were living out of suitcases from island to island and countries in Europe. When we went to French Guiana and Haiti, it's the same, but French Guiana was striking. I saw thousands of people at the airport and some people with bouquets and so on. And I had no idea that they came for us. I thought that because people always coming from Dominica, where people were always dreaming since in those days, Sunday Island of International Airport. I thought that this big crowd was about International Airport. Then I realized that people came for us.
Right.
The next thing is I arrived there wearing a hat because it was raining when we left. It was not a baseball cap like I like to wear these days. It was a real hat and it was raining. And then people were so fascinated by the hat that the merchants imported hats like that from neighboring Suriname, that the following day or 2 days after, almost every young man in French Guiana was wearing an identical hat that I had to keep on wearing myself.
So you were an influencer before it was a thing.
Well, yeah, had I known then, I'd have made a lot of money out of that.
I know. My God. Wow.
So then I realized that was something. Something might have been happening.
Something was happening. So how did you go, and was it intentional, to leave Guadeloupe and go to France?
Well, when there was demand throughout the Creole world, so I quickly realized that the Creole, the global Creole, we didn't use the word global then, we probably might have said international. That music market niche was an important niche. I realized that we sold more records than some of the famous French artists, some of the famous Swiss artists, some of the famous Belgian artists or Dutch artists because of their population. Our market was larger. And when the Billboard magazine, which is like the Bible of the industry,
For sure.
started speaking about Exile One having sold 70,000 albums in metropolitan France without radio and television, I started to realize that we're into something very, very interesting. The move from Guadeloupe to France was on the invitation of 2 record companies. And when I say record companies, major record companies. And so we signed with one of them, Barclay, part of the Universal Group, and that was the move. And I must say that we were the first Creole group to sign a major record contract. And the second one was Kassav 10 years later.
Mm.
So that tells its own story.
I think that says everything. I think that says absolutely everything. What makes France the place you want to call home?
Because I tried living in different places outside of Dominica. Well, of course, Guadeloupe. During my stay in Guadeloupe, I stayed in Martinique a little bit. I had the opportunity because of music tours of visiting a number of countries in Africa, in the Caribbean. I used to love Haiti in the days of Duvalier. So I didn't want to get into their political situation, but I felt it was a fantastic place. But I was not Haitian, so I couldn't probably relate with the difficulties of those who had difficulty. But I was exposed as a music, as an artist to the best of Haiti, and probably I was kept away from the other side. So I found that Haiti was one. Haiti had two international airports then, that is back in the early 70s. Music schools, conservatories, and I thought that Haiti was okay. I would have lived easily in Haiti without understanding the political and economic aspect of there. At one point, I went to the United States and stayed there for 5.5 years. And France remains for me the place I prefer to call home. And I became French probably about 2 or 3 years ago, despite the fact that I lived and paid taxes there for a half century.
Wow.
Because I always felt there was no need. I always considered myself an expat rather than an immigrant. I always felt proud to say that I live in your country, I pay taxes in your country, create my own employment in your country, and I have always maintained my nationality.
Yes.
But with age, I think that Europe owes me more than Australia or the United States, and probably Britain owes me, but with their Brexit, I'm not sure that I want to break away with them. So there's so many reasons. Even I find French culture to be so present in the Dominican culture.
Also,
The way we eat, the way we drink,
Mm.
the way we dress, we embrace the madras, which is in fact a European appreciation for Indian
yes.
fabrics and so on. One would think that we would go towards Africa, but in terms of our music, the Jinping and that sort of thing, I want to go quickly on that music. For example, I had the opportunity of producing Our Lady of Song, Ophelia's first album. One of her hits is I Dominique.
Yes. Yes.
I put it in cadence at the time because I discovered that cadence was really going places. But when she came with the song, her composition, it was a waltz. For those who are musically inclined, it is not 1, 2, 3, 4 like calypso or even reggae. It's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. She sang Dominic. It's not the law, more of the folklore, if you will. You know, that folklore, Jinping and so on, has more European, French influence. We adopted carnival from France. Italy, moving from France, Italy didn't have any slave plantations, so we got carnival. So I see the roots of my identity, the cultural side, a lot of it from France. Even the way that we speak English in Dominica. I got a love because of songwriting to become a student of linguistics, particularly applied linguistics. And I noticed that our natural way of expression in English, most of our pronunciation is based more on French. I listen to the radio, as I say, the Dominican radio every day, and I hear people pronouncing even words with two syllables: Japan, see,
Yeah.
capacity. Sometimes they're intelligent, educated people with university degrees pronouncing words with two, three, four syllables, placing the accent in a French way, the melody. There's all this French that has become Creole. So France is it.
Here's something that I want to raise with you. Your aesthetic, the aesthetic that you've had, and you spoke about it very early on in the discussion, right? How you dressed when you went to that interview at Geest. So I don't know if you realize it or anybody else follows. I love pop culture, so I look at everything. Your aesthetic is very different from your compatriots, okay? Or compatriots. You the way you look overall, a lot of your compatriots, for example, or their hair in locks, you did not. You have a very, how can I say, a very what is the word you use?
Conservative.
Conservative in a way, but here's what I'm going to add. You wear freaking leather pants and tight leather pants like Mick Jagger. Like you're that guy. So I'm just wondering, like, where did that come from?
It's strange that we're talking history. You know, sometime ago, I posted a picture of 4 schoolmates from St. Mary's Academy. I posted that on Facebook because it was the birthday of one of them, King Everlasting. We were 4 Calypsonians, and that might have been, no, it was 1967. In that picture, we all wore close-fitting clothes, including tight pants. So that was fashionable at the time.
Got it.
I remember my mother used to tell me that before, because I thought then in 1967 that we were trendsetters. My mother told me, no, that was fashionable way before, and
Right.
it was followed by baggy pants, very large
Yes. Yes.
pants. And so I think that's why I said conservative a while ago. I kind of stayed in the 60s as far as the dress mode is concerned. Another thing is that we wore neckties at the St. Mary's Academy then.
Yes.
So some of the comments on Facebook, they say, well, you guys wore ties. Yes, we did. And the clothes, the tight, the thing is that had I been alone, people might think that that was my style. No, it
Right.
was the style.
Right.
And I kept with it. As far as dreadlocks, it's so interesting that a lot of the points that you raise are points that I mentioned in my book. You know, someone who is 30 or probably 40 years old in the Caribbean do not realize that it is the first time in the history of humanity that we see people with gray dreadlocks. It is the first time. The movement began in 1930 in Jamaica. I was about 18 years old when I saw a man with locks, and I should say a lock, because he had one big one.
One big one, huh?
Yeah, he came to Dominica. I can't recall his name, but he had Gordon in his name. His surname was Gordon, and he came to Dominica and he spoke like, I think he came from England, a black man came from England, but probably had this Hyde Park speaking in public thing. And I remember listening to him. I might have been about 17 or 18. He's the first man who spoke about Frantz Fanon. And I was amazed. I went to the library and then I discovered Frantz Fanon and later even wrote a tribute to Frantz Fanon. So that's the first time I saw a man with, let's say, dreadlocks.
Mm-hmm.
I followed the evolution of the Rasta movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then while I find the hairstyle to be very interesting, thing. I didn't think, I tried to understand the philosophy. I understood that it was, above all, besides being spiritual, anti-colonial. And I thought that I could get involved. I don't know if I'm anti-colonial. I have my convictions, and I didn't think it was necessary for me to join the movement.
You did not think so. Here's something else I want to ask you about. You also elevated the business aspect of music in a way that most people had not seen before, especially coming from Dominica. What drove that? What caused that?
Strangely, Sam Cooke. When I was at the academy, I used to go to the library very often, to the Roseau Library, that is, because foreign newspapers and magazines were available, and the biographies of artists. I wanted to know more about artists. And I discovered then that the soul singer Sam Cooke was not just a singer. I understood that when you decide to make music a career, you need to develop a number of revenue streams, because the profession of singer itself is ephemeral. You know, or it could be. So Sam Cooke had a recording studio, so he was a record producer. Then if you produce records, then you have to deal with various artists. Then you have to know about distribution. So it's not only a music thing, it's like a business thing. This is why I ended up going to study business administration in Puerto Rico before they threw me out, but that's another story. So from these early days, I found that out. I also found out that the most lucrative part of the music industry then, and probably now,
Yes.
is in the area of copyright, the ownership of the works, which should not be confused with the record, so to speak. It's the ownership of the works. And one of the things that I feel very proud about is when I started working with Ophelia and her husband, my friend Mark Marie, I remember spending a whole night talking to him about copyright. And despite the fact that he is an academic at the time, it was in Barbados, he was a professor at UWI in Barbados. He is into economics.
Yes, I'm aware.
He became a copyright expert.
He did.
So I'm so happy that I introduced him to that. And that's it. So that, to answer your question, Sam Cooke is the mentor. I never met him, but that's what drove me.
We hear about people in positions like yours, leading a band, traveling all over the place, being known, being famous. Did you party like a rock star?
I probably did that for a very short period of time.
What is short to you?
Maybe months, huh?
Months.
Yeah, because I recall in the glory days of Exile 1, whenever we went to different cities, the guys would always get dressed and go to clubs and that sort of thing. And I always stayed home.
Really?
I always stayed home because probably I was shy. I didn't know how to deal with celebrity. And celebrity in that context of African, Caribbean, people were not used to having stars of their own. So I would go to a restaurant to have a meal. I might be accompanied by a young lady that
Right.
it might be our first date. And then people would just come up to me and say, "Hey, sing me that song, And then I noticed that one of the guys that the late Jeff Joe, one of the first bands to follow to Guadeloupe when the Cadas Calypso thing started, the Gramax, he handled that very, very well. I mean, when people would come up to say, "Oh, Jeff," and then he got up and start singing and have the whole restaurant singing and so on. That's not me.
He did that.
Oh, yeah, that is why, in the minds of many people, I am not the one who drew him across. He might have drawn me and everybody else because he had done that. There are many, not many, there are few. I think that Dominicans in general, I say that because when I observed the members of Exile One, when we traveled, at one point we had one Trinidadian. The Trinidadian was more of an extrovert. Dominicans seem to be more reserved.
Yes.
Jeff was not one of those reserved people. We have another Calypso, Ras Daba, who is, you haven't heard that one?
No, at all. At all.
Ras Daba is from a group called Black Affairs.
Okay.
So Black Affairs, and he is very much like Jeff, but Jeff is really the king of that kind of ambience person. So I didn't like that, and I didn't like going that way. I much preferred to entertain at home, which is to surprise a lot of people because they always thought, and in that world then, I don't know how to do it now because I'm still a home person. People would fix appointments at 2 or 3 in the morning. They say, okay, meet me for midnight breakfast or whatever at 3 o'clock in this restaurant where there's music being played and so on, because they think that you'd be partying before. I'd go
Right.
to bed,
Yeah.
I'd wake up, go to that meeting and go back home. So the rock and roll attitude. Now, in hindsight, I might have been right because so many of my colleagues are dead now. And we can safely say because of excess, you know, I mean, they didn't live like sportsmen. Let's put it that way.
So I want to ask you this point blank. Okay. You're hinting at it, but it's something that I wanted to raise. Some of your compatriots have had very public battles with, alcohol, drugs, and some of them, died by it. You never, obviously, you're still here. You did not go down that route. What do you think saved you? Is it that you did not party like a rock star? Is that what it is?
It's partly that and partly because of my personality, my mentality. I am a risk taker, but not in circumstances that deal with life. I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, opposite the Botanic Gardens in Roseau, there was some kind of children's recreation park with swings and whatever they had in those days, saws and that kind of thing. And I just used to watch the children. I never participated in those things. So things that look dangerous to me, I got from young. When I was a teenager, came from Portsmouth. Portsmouth is the most maritime and cosmopolitan town. I think it's the only town.
Yes.
Roosevelt City, I'm told.
Yes.
So Portsmouth is very cosmopolitan. There are many families with sea captains from Big Quay and from all over the Caribbean that are head their households, and yachts, yachting, small yachts, have always been a factor. So marijuana entered Portsmouth long before. I know that because of my age group. So when I was at the academy, nobody, including the teachers, seemed to know anything, because I think the conversation with drugs came in. And I remember a teacher saying, speaking of a saxophonist who smoked marijuana, and he started seeing little men coming out of his saxophone. So which means even the teachers had no idea But in Portsmouth, people were smoking grass. I tried it and I didn't find it good for me because it didn't make me feel normal. It made me feel not drunk, but in that family, almost drunk. And I want to be alert at all times. So that was out. The same thing with alcohol. I have nothing against alcohol. As a matter of fact, I always have a fantastic alcohol collection that just sits there. Occasionally, there are some people that would like to do a little taste of here or there. Whenever I travel, I like it. I like that alcohol collection. But drinking, it's not really a big thing. Cigarettes, I remember trying cigarettes for about a week. And then I discovered that it made my fingers become yellow. And I didn't like that. Probably I didn't know how to smoke either. Because I think when you smoke, you're supposed to inhale it, let it go down to your lungs and blow it out. But I just used to pull it in and push it off. So I probably didn't smoke properly.
Going back home, ever on the table?
Well, I went back home twice.
You did. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first time it did affect my career and business. The first time is Dominica, because I like most immigrants, I think that there's always that dream of giving back.
Mhm.
Either for patriotism, either for superficial reasons of whatever, but we always think we need to give back. So I mentioned Hurricane David, but before Hurricane David, Dominica the government was overturned, and I was out there very concerned. I had a home in Guadeloupe. It was not like today. I didn't used to follow what was happening. I knew that there was some unrest in Dominica, but I didn't know to what extent.
Right.
And one day, maybe about 10 prominent Dominicans arrived in Guadeloupe. I just mentioned one name. One of them was Mike Douglas.
Mike Douglas, for the sake of our listeners, was the representative for the Portsmouth area and also the leader of the Dominica Labour Party. So very interesting that Mike Douglas was one of the 10.
Yeah, but the thing is, was part of the government that was overthrown.
Yes.
For a quick history, that overthrow in Dominica was a significant one. The president ran away. I mean, it was a political disaster. So all of that was happening. So there was an overthrow. So among these prominent people, somehow in Dominica, we came to an understanding that there would be an interim government until new elections. Yeah, until new. So when they made the interim government, Mike Douglas happened to be a part. Mike Douglas happens to be from Portsmouth too, huh?
True. Yes.
So the same posse passive. So when they made that interim government, there was one radio station in Dominica. And as a matter of fact, it was radio and television at the time. Just a few hours of television. Dominica Broadcasting Service with a radio and television. And so since they overthrew everything government, they overthrew those that were at the radio. And they invited me because at the time, I was a Dominican that people knew a little bit everywhere. But when they came to Guadeloupe, I was a little mini god in Guadeloupe and so on. So they thought I had my own business, having produced artists from Martinique, Guadeloupe Reunion, and so on. They thought it would have been a good idea for me to be part of the interim as the manager of DBS Radio. So I returned home. That's my first return to manage DBS. That was it might have been July or August 1979. And then Hurricane David came and smashed down the whole country. Yes. Interim government, GBS and everything. I could have left because at the time I had 9 people, including children from Guadeloupe, So they were French who were on vacation with me in Dominica.
Really?
Yeah. And there was a battleship, a French Navy ship of some kind, and wanted us all to return. But I chose to stay in Dominica. And I stayed up to election day, an election that Dame Eugenia Charles won. And election day, I met Oliver Serafin, who was the interim prime minister. But that wasn't
That was the
wasn't
indicator.
case. I had decided that my interim mission was over.
Right.
And this is why I think that the period, I think it was about a year that I spent in Dominica, did affect my business and my career, because in that kind of market, you don't just disappear. Had it been now, people might criticize social media, but there would be interaction. I just disappeared. I went back again.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying like now in this period.
Oh, no. But the reason is not because I don't love my country. I still visit probably 3 times a year, particularly if I'm invited to perform or to speak, because these days I'm invited to speak more than to sing. But I think that when at my age, let's just put it this way, at my age, I have to be concerned about health.
Absolutely.
I think we're getting there. We're probably getting there, but I don't want to take the risk of having to be flown to Martinique and Guadeloupe and that sort of thing. And even the ratings of healthcare in France, in the global France, Martinique and Guadeloupe is not right up in the hit parade. So I prefer to live in metropolitan France.
Interesting. So I have 2 more questions for you before I let you go. Do you plan on retiring? I know that you tour, you travel all the time in an artistic capacity. Do you plan on retiring?
Well, officially, I'm a retiree on 2 counts. I say officially because as a songwriter composer, I was fortunate to earn enough copyright to guarantee me retirement at age 55,
Right.
which is relatively young when I see countries struggling with retirement age. So in that area, that was good. So that's like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Also, as I said, I had a keen interest. I still do, linguistics. And part of it was I taught English as a foreign language in France for a few years. So that gave me some retirement
Ushan?
on what they call general retirement, which is different. So in that area, I'm retired. But as an artist, as long as there is demand, I respond to the demand.
Gordon Henderson, in my household, I will repeat, you are simply le Gondon icon, and I don't use words lightly. I do not. And the creator of a genre that has spawned many other genres, including soca music. It's a pleasure always. It's a pleasure always to talk with you. And thank you for pulling up to the Caribbean Immigrant.
Well, thank you so much. I should thank you. I really appreciate. Thanks for having me. And I hope that one day we can break bread together,
Indeed.
family. And it's a pity it's not a European thing. Thanksgiving is not a European thing. So we'll create our own Thanksgiving, because there's a lot that we should be thankful for. Thank you so much for having me.
I am Kamala Aaron, and that was another episode of The Caribbean Immigrant. I look forward to having you pulling up again sometime. Thank you so much for watching.